Welcome back everybody to yet another episode here on the Monster Bass channel. Thank you all for tuning in to yet another one. Today's episode, guys, we're not going to be talking about a fishing lure that you got in your bag. We're actually going to be talking about the monster stops that you would have got in your Monster Bass bag. These bad boys right here. And we're going to go over a couple rigs where I'm really happy to see this in the Monster Bass bag. And they're really simple to use, but also pretty much essential, in my opinion, in summertime bass fishing. Before we jump into today's episode, guys, and get into these monster stops right here and talk about a couple different rigs that I think are really important to be using these on as well. If you guys like this type of content here on the Monster Bass channel, tips, tricks, out there fishing, guys, we're all out there to help you guys catch your personal best and most importantly, have fun out there on the water. So if you guys like these types of videos, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and hit that little bell notification so you never miss when we upload new content on the Monster Bass channel. Well, guys, I run a channel called Wisconsin Wildman, so if you guys are interested in checking out my channel, it'll be linked down below in the description. I do a ton of fishing on there, hunting, all sorts of different stuff. So if you love outdoorsy kind of stuff, channels, things like that, my channel will be linked down below in the description. So go over there, click that link, check it out, and let me know what you guys think. Like I said, guys, we're talking about the monster stops. Now, they're little bobber stoppers, guys. I don't know if you've ever used them before, but they're very simple to use. All you do is on here, they have a little loop through them, and you slide your line through, and then you just basically pull the bobber stop off, and it lands on your line. Now, they're great for summertime bass fishing and around thick cover, basically. So if you're fishing around a lot of laydowns or fishing around a lot of vegetation, things like that, these bobber stoppers are great. So the first rig that we're going to be talking about, guys, and it's one of those that I think is essential in summertime bass fishing, and the reason being is summertime bass fishing, the vegetation gets very thick. It gets really thick, and a lot of times you get fish that go deep or they go shallow. Now, one of my favorite rigs in the summertime is going to be a punching rig. So a punching rig is a big ounce and a half tungsten weight with a big flipping hook. Now, as you guys can see on here, I have a bobber stopper. This little black deal right there, that is a bobber stopper. Now, sometimes if I go heavier than an ounce, I do 2 of them, but for an ounce, I just have 1 bobber stop on there. So the punching rig is phenomenal in the summertime. So basically what you do with this rig, guys, I'll bust it out for you and show you exactly what I'm talking about. But basically, why this is so good is a lot of times when it's super hot out, those fish need somewhere to go. So they tuck up under super thick vegetation. Well, if they're under all that thick vegetation, the only way to get to them is to get through that vegetation. So a punching rig like this is great because you have big ounce tungsten weight, but the deal is this weight cannot move up and down the line. If it moves up and down the line, it's going to get snagged up in a bunch of vegetation. So that's where the bobber stop right here, guys, comes in handy. You basically slide this bobber stop all the way down to your weight. Now this weight cannot move. So when you throw it through the vegetation, it punches through the vegetation and you have a nice compact bait. This is, it's absolutely dynamite in the summertime, guys. I can't say enough about the punch setup. So bobber stop, but if I go up to an ounce and a half tungsten weight, I get any heavier than this ounce right here, I use 2 bobber stops. That's why I'm so happy to see these monster stops in the bag, because I use a punch setup an absolute ton in the summertime. If I'm frogging and I get blown up and they don't quite hit the frog, I throw this punching rig in there. And a lot of times if I just know that there's fish underneath that matted vegetation, I'll just throw a punch rig through duckweed, through thick lily pads, things like that. So summertime bass fishing, I have a punch rig on the boat at all times, and that's why, the monster stops are a huge thing, because they're gonna help you guys set this thing up. Not typically something that you'd typically see in a bait bag or things like that, where you're like, oh, I could really use these. It's something that is small that I think everybody should have in their tackle box. Moving on to the next rig. Now this one is basically, it's just a Texas rig. So for the Texas rig, you can either fish a Texas rig pegged or unpegged. Now, a lot of guys will peg a Texas rig with maybe a toothpick. They'll use part of the toothpick to rig their Texas rig, or they'll use a bobber stop like myself. So the reason why you might want to peg a Texas rig, now a lot of times, I would say the majority of the time, I actually fish a Texas rig with no peg on there. So I don't use a bobber stop at all, or monster stop if you will. I don't use one at all most of the time. Now, where I do use a bobber stop or monster stop, where I'm going to plug one of these guys in, is if I'm fishing around a lot of wood or cover. So a lot of times if I'm fishing around rock, or if I'm fishing around specifically lay down wood, especially on the Mississippi River, there's a lot of lay down cover and wood. A lot of times that's when I'm gonna peg the weight, because if you're fishing around a lot of wood, if you can see this, the weight slides freely, right? So if I'm fishing around a lot of wood, you're trying to pull this up and over wood and branches, and then this weight drops down and gets hung up on branches, and then this thing's coming along, and this is just an absolute mess. So if I'm fishing around a lot of wood, vegetation, standing timber, things like that, that is when I'm going to peg this. So I'm going to take that bobber stop, I'm going to put it on first thing, then the weight, then the hook. And if you put that bobber stop on first, what it's going to do is it's not going to allow the Texas rig to slide at all. This weight will stay pinned. So if you're fishing around a lot of lay down cover, a lot of wood, trees, things like that, this is all going to stay compact. So when you're hopping it over branches and things like that, it's all going to stay one unit. So you're going to run into a lot, you're not going to get this snagged up as much. If you fish a Texas rig without a peg, if you don't peg the Texas rig and you're fishing it around a lot of lay down cover, I promise you, you're going to get tangled up, you're going to get snagged a lot more often. It's not to say that it's not going to happen, even if you do peg this thing, but if you peg it, it's going to be compact, it's all going to stick together, and you're going to have a lot less snags with this. So I'd highly recommend, if you're gonna fish, thick matted vegetation in the summertime, I would highly recommend try using a punch rig, and that's where these are gonna help you guys set that rig up. Also, if you're gonna fish around lay down cover, guys, especially, hot summer days, a lot of those bass will tuck underneath or get into the shade underneath that cover, those, lay down trees, lay down brush piles, things like that. Peg your Texas rig. It's going to help up your hookup ratio. You're not going to get snagged up as much. I mean, there's nothing more annoying than getting snagged and breaking off and having to retie. That's why if you find yourself around a lot of, brush piles and downed trees and things like that, and you find yourself, constantly being snagged, try pegging it with one of your monster stops that you would have gotten in your monster bass bag. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. It's, we're not talking specifically about a lure, but this right here, guys, it's a small thing that you got in your bag that maybe you might not even think of. Maybe some of you are like, oh, heck yeah, I could use these. Maybe there's some of you that are like, I don't even know what I'm going to use that for. These are just a couple examples of when these come in clutch, in my opinion. In summertime bass fishing, there's no better time to have these in your arsenal. So if you guys haven't used them, I hope, these couple techniques help you guys, get into using these, because they really do have a place in your tackle box. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Remember to like and subscribe to the Monster Bass channel, and we will see you guys on the next one.